Hello, PsychU community, and welcome to today's webinar, Technology and Mental Health, Defining the Current Landscape. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Takolowski, and I am a medical science liaison for Otsuka Pharmaceutical Development and Commercialization Incorporated. I'll be serving as the moderator for today's exciting discussion featuring Dr. Megan Coder and Dr. Jake Behrens.
So with that, I'll jump into the conversation. This is Megan Coder, and I really appreciate what Dr. Behrens talked about in terms of what the current situation is, and then how some of these new technologies may be able to start to address some of these issues. So what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through these 6 types of digital health technologies. All of these technologies could be used in the care of patients and really could be used in a wide variety of behavioral, mental, and physical conditions. So while we are talking here today a lot about the mental health and behavioral space, these are applicable across the board also. So the categories that we'll be talking about today include digital therapeutics, mHealth, devices, sensors, and wearables, personalized healthcare tools, health information technology, and then we'll end up with telehealth. So the way that we're going to be going through this is for each product category type, we'll be giving a quick overview of how these technologies are classified, how they are regulated, and then most importantly, how they're actually used in practice. So with that said, let's jump into the first category, digital therapeutics. So my background, I am the executive director at the Digital Therapeutics Alliance, and my focus really is on this new category of medicine. So what I think is of interest for you to know today is that while there are some products that have been on the market for nearly 10 years, there really is a growing number of these products in the pipeline and or nearing market readiness. Sample conditions that are being addressed currently include topics such as diabetes, asthma, insomnia, depression, and even substance abuse disorder. So as the industry will continue to evolve, you'll continue to see more of these products. And I think that will be of interest as you start to recognize that some may be prescribed, some may be provided over the counter, or even as a direct consumer route. And really staying here, it's really focusing on the ability to use these products to really start to enable patients to have greater access to and visibility into their care and their clinical outcomes. In terms of the clinician side, they can really extend that treatment and care process with patients outside of their immediate clinic. And really across the board, I think these products have a big potential to actually meet patient needs in a new way, where they can actually enable the active delivery of care in a high quality, standardized manner between and for clinician visits. So there often is a lot of discussion in this space now around what really is a digital therapeutic. And from our alliance's perspective, we've been able to work together with different industry groups to realize that there are 10 principles we believe that all products should adhere to. These include the types of claims being made and how they're being delivered in terms of software-generated delivery. But we're really looking at ensuring that every product that is claiming to deliver a clinical intervention to a patient using software is actually supported by design, manufacturing, quality best practices, that they engage end users throughout the product development process, that they really adhere closely to privacy and security protections, that they publish trial results with clinically meaningful outcomes in journals, and that they are actually cleared and reviewed by regulatory bodies as required to support their product claims. So that's just an overview, a really quick snapshot of what digital therapeutics are. But Dr. Behrens, I think, will have a little bit more to say next in terms of how these are used in practice.
Sure. This gets to be kind of a little tricky for what are people thinking of this. Whenever I'm thinking of a digital therapeutic, I'm basically thinking of something that I can quote unquote prescribe or recommend with an evidence base that a patient can use in some way. I think of this as something that will augment our traditional care model, not to replace it, but sometimes that I can recommend over a distance, things that people can use themselves with an evidence base that might help a given condition. So something they would do on digitally from a computer, from a phone, from some type of, I guess, platform that's been developed and has an evidence base. And here, is a couple kind of examples of different things that are out there in the market for looking at panic disorder, ways of doing biofeedback using carbon monoxide sensor and nasal cannula. So they're actually working on different exercises to monitor and to learn from how their body's reacting. Different ways of using, and once again, think of these as more of kind of app-related type of things to be able to use along with for substance abuse treatment. So you're actually going through kind of modules and a lot of things from 12-step programs, from compliance, from regular tools that they can check in with, as well as things you can do for actually be able to much easier be able to put cognitive behavioral therapy for sleep into someone's hand. I know for myself, when I try and refer for CBT for sleep, and evidence base is tremendously high, it is the referral process itself is so difficult, and getting a patient to go through and follow through with it, to take the time to show up, to be involved, that inertia to be able to get that started is so high, versus if I can easily put something there on their phone or have it linked in my visit summary so they can simply click, it opens at the App Store on their phone, they have something downloaded and it's there in front of them to potentially use. I think it's just trying to put something else in their hand that we can use along with their current treatments. When I think of this in the future, there's so much we can do, both like I'm working in a treatment. I work in many different settings. I really get on there, but my clinic is Envision ADHD, where I work with high functioning adults in a private practice setting. And that's my laboratory. That's where I'm able to bring in, try different technologies, use it with a very willing base, and then take it to these other settings that I work in. I wear many hats, work in many other places. I'm one of these Midwesterners that can't say no to things. But that's where I get to take things learned with a few and then be able to take it to many different populations. But that's what I find is, if I'm going to other settings, if I'm going to a rural place, in inner city, something in substance abuse, severe mental illness in the population, it's not always even just tools go directly to the patient, but how do you take these to the other care managers, the other teams that you work with in places? And even when patients themselves can't immediately get access to you, do you have these other tools that you can recommend or prescribe, quote unquote, even so that somebody has a tool they can use in the moment, a tool they can use until they can meet with you, something to basically extend that level of care, and even give something people can do in the meantime. And I always look at this as something as we just want the full menu of options. If I'm looking at how to treat someone for anxiety, we have medication, therapy, supplements, exercise, diet. Is this another tool we could put in the repertoire, something we can easily get in people's hands that doesn't take a complicated referral process? And in here, we're starting to see that, and we'll continue to see, I think, that as more of the evidence base comes out, that we'll have other payers, employers start to cover such things for people. I know this makes it a little bit more complicated, because then we're reliant on which insurance, which payer a person has, versus just having something universally available. But I think we will start to see kind of more coverage for such devices as they come out.
Great, thank you. So moving on then to the next section, we're going to talk a little bit about mHealth and how these differ. On a digital therapeutic side, we're really looking at programs and products that are going to be in that clinical space, making a clinical intervention and actually being then regulated or reviewed by clinical trial study data and all of that. So when we look at mHealth, this is a different space where we're looking more at the types of mobile apps that may exist for general health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and other aspects of conditions that patients may have. So Dr. Behrens will provide more detailed insights next, but some high-level examples of mobile health products could be items such as your wellness, fitness trackers, nutrition apps, consumer health information sources fit under here, and then also medication adherence apps. So those are some examples of what we're talking about. There really is a really wide variety of mHealth apps that are available to patients and clinicians. But then this also includes a wide variety of security, quality, usability, and effectiveness measures too. So a clinician that would be looking to recommend one of these apps to a patient should really look closely at what the product is claiming to do and how it is achieving that, and what types of background details may be valuable for either the patient or clinician or other form of end user to know. As compared to the digital therapeutic realm, where many of these products actually do undergo a full regulatory process since they are making a medical claim, the majority of mHealth apps do not actually make a full medical claim, so therefore they are not actually subject to full regulation by the FDA. Therefore, even though there are a few groups out there who are trying to really start to evaluate these types of apps, it really does fall onto patients, consumers, and users and clinicians to really be the responsible ones for determining what degree of safety, functionality, security really works for them, and then finding out how that best fits into their life is really important too. So I'll turn it over then to talk more about the details to Dr. Behrens.
And here, these are very kind of broad terms. So we have many different ways that we can utilize such a, within a category. And in here, just some current examples that are out there, definitely kind of, apps on your phone for, tracking, basically rating scales, different symptoms. I don't care if it's, side effects, depressive symptoms. I always follow depression, anxiety, ADHD symptoms of all my people, track data over time. You can also correlate it with their current treatment things. So then giving insight both to patients and clinicians. Easy ways, of being able to recommend and put basically something on the phone for patients to be able to, give them specific kind of mindfulness exercises, breathing exercises, actually building that as part of your treatment plan. So here's, a link to an app, something they can download, they can use. You have ways for actually now for physicians within some of these programs that you can actually get kind of specialized kind of, not that you get paid, but you get referral codes that hopefully give discounts and easier access to patients. Different ways of being able to get on phone, to work through different type of kind of programs, checklists, to be able to be as directive as possible as you can. Sometimes you can do that, with different exercise apps, with diet tracking applications, or things that give very specific and things that you can control, but of meal plans or ways of eating or of tracking. I've found is with patients often, the more directed you are, not just saying eat more leafy greens and cut out sugar, but be as directive as you can, something that they can follow to a T. I've found better compliance with that, and just, I think, more excitement for, okay, there's something recommended to me, I can use this, I can follow this. I think it can get well beyond this as we get into exercise, diet, mindfulness, things that you can just basically send or hyperlink or be able to get right to a patient, so something they can use from home, ways to be able to get those active, I guess, interventions, so to speak, into their hands, but also a way of actually following it over time. And also in here in mHealth, we can take it even a broader step out, is a way that how can we actually get care for patients in many ways. I work in a lot of tele places. A lot of times people don't have insurance, don't have access to primary care. Not to mention their prices can be really bad if they haven't met deductibles. But a lot of ways where getting in front of people, they can get access to labs for much discounted prices. They can order themselves discounted areas for being able to find discounts on medications. They can go to the pharmacy, show a thing on their phone, and basically get prices that may or may not be cheaper than insurance. Ways of actually getting, if people don't have access to primary care, ways that they can get kind of immediate visits with low cash prices regardless of insurance, so they can get access to primary care. Otherwise they may not have that. I've been able to use actually ways where people can book home sleep studies far easier than it is to go through a normal referral process, even if that's just a screening process. And when I'm working with people over tele in many different areas, I have no idea which system they're in. I have no way to refer within that system, but I can give them access to these universal systems, which are all available from the palm of their hand, which even if they're just ordering or doing it from there. But it also comes into just how do patients communicate with their physicians or with their providers. And so much, this mHealth and what's in their hands is a way that they can schedule appointments. They can communicate with their team. And I think it's just bringing that kind of timely, responsive care right to the patient, right in the palm of their hand. And that's something, support. I don't care if that's for therapy, for and here for substance use disorders. There's so many ways that we can bring teams together and put these resources right in the palm of the patient's hand and make it as I guess as targeted, but also as directive as possible. We're here, lay out your day. You wake up, you take this medication, you click this link, it opens the app on your phone, here's this exercise, here's this meal plan for the day, and make things as directive as possible. I think that's a new way that we can start doing more than simply saying you should eat better and exercise more, which I've seen since med school. It doesn't always catch on with people.
I can even relate to that myself. So in terms of the next category, we are going to be looking at devices, sensors, and wearables. So when we're looking at this, I think one thing to point out is that this is often a more diverse category than people realize. So while we are talking about things that you could wear, but we're also looking at products then that will be more than tracking fitness. We're looking at tracking movement. We're looking at patient functionality. We're looking at biochemical responses. We're looking at response times and other forms of physical and other indications. So what is important to note is that this is still a separate category given the type of products they are, but they're able to interrelate into each of the other category segments that we're talking about on today's call. So they could be used independently, but more often than not, they're usually connected either directly to one single app or product or digital therapeutic, or else they could be used as a plugin and within a variety of products. Also of interest on this area is that these types of products could be used by patients in an everyday setting, but then they could also be used as a validated measurement tool in a clinical trial setting. So they could fall either on that medical device line or else is more of the consumer wearable line based upon, again, the function and the claim of the product, which really is going to become a theme as we go through these. If we're looking at those that are on the medical device side, so the FDA really defines a medical device as a product that's intended for the use in the diagnosis of a disease or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of a disease, or that is intended to affect the structure or any function of the body. That definition in itself is almost identical to that of a drug, but what makes it specific to the device side is that it meets all those one of those criteria, but then that does not achieve its purpose by a chemical action in the body and is not metabolized. So depending on, again, the function and the purpose of these products, they could be considered as a medical device and therefore would be subject to a regulatory oversight process. Or if the claim falls short of meeting that medical device definition, then they likely will not have the full oversight that is required for traditional devices. On this slide, we've talked a lot about FDA. The other two agencies that may be of interest to know who may be tangentially or fully engaged in this are the Federal Trade Commission, who really, its mission is really focused on the promotion of consumer protection and the prevention of anti-competitive business practices. And in this area, their particular focus is really on the legitimacy of product claims. The other group, as mentioned on the slide, that's involved is sometimes the Federal Communications Commission. So while these devices, again, could be used independently, more often than not, they are incorporated into a variety of different other products. And it really does come down to the function, depending on then what level of oversight they have by the FDA, FTC, FCC, or others. So that is the regulatory perspective. I'll pass it back then to Dr. Behrens to give, again, the more of the real world perspective.
Yeah. I think when most people think of this area, we're generally drawn towards fitness trackers, tracking steps, maybe like a scale that syncs with something, so we're monitoring weight. But many other things that we can kind of take this to another way than simply following sleep, movement, weight or so. But we have to look at this as, as a clinician, there's so many, actually following practice guidelines, I should be monitoring certain things, especially with certain medications, certain type of treatments. And that's where I see a lot of this can be really helpful, both from like clinician to patient, say in their homes, if the patient has this with them, which would be very helpful if I'm doing telemedicine with people in their homes, or else actually having devices that work in many remote locations, clinic places when you're working with teams, such as in a community support program, severe mental illness in the population, and substance abuse treatment programs, whatnot. But the ability of actually being able to meet and be able to actually obtain data that we should be following in the follow-up practice guidelines, such as if we're prescribing someone an antipsychotic medication, we should be doing metabolic monitoring. We should be able to follow weight, if we could easily monitor weight, blood sugar levels, BKG for QTC, the monitor for prolongation, ways of actually checking if that is aligned. Are we able to check potassium levels and do that in easy, fast ways? To make sure we're preventing against like torsades, following weight, QTC, potassium, glucose. If we're doing cardiac monitoring for things such as if we're working with a stimulant medication effectors, so we're following blood pressure and heart rate, we can do this all remotely. With methadone, working with treatment in there. I know in my facility, working in the place, it's very difficult to refer people out for an EKG. If we had an easier way where I could just set up at any place I work, here is a device. It's not worn by the patient, but it's used in there, so all the data is automatically synced to me remotely, so I'm able to easily get QTC, get weights, some ways of even getting labs and whatnot can make it a lot easier for how we can use this. And it's not just, oh, hey, I follow this and I rate my patient on it, but how do we actually use these basically just to make it easier to get the data that we should be getting, but it so often is not being obtained because of limitations in having it on-site in the clinic, patient not having it in their home, or just even the regular follow-through and the steps it takes of people not being able to go to other places for it. And I think as we continue to gather more information is what can we do? Like, will we be able to use sensors that from movement in arms from something you wear, as well as a camera that's monitoring face, to look at things such as tardive dyskinesia or types of tremor? Are they getting better from an objective standpoint of how much movement is there? Are we able to see facial movements, tongue movements well before they're visible or known to us in other ways? I think there's going to be a lot more that we're going to be able to gather easier, more effectively, and more standardized data over time as we continue to learn more about this and actually make it easier for clinicians to follow their actual practice guidelines.